then decided that the gold standard should be removed. In order to do this, they needed to acquire the remaining gold in the system. So, under the pretense of helping to end the Depression, came the 1933 gold seizure. Under the threat of imprisonment for 10 years, everyone in America was required to turn in all gold bullion to the Treasury, essentially robbing the public of what little wealth they had left. And at the end of 1933, the gold standard was abolished. If you look at a dollar bill before 1933, it says it is redeemable in gold. If you look at the dollar bill today, it says it is legal tender, which means it is backed by absolutely nothing. The only thing that gives our money value is the public faith and how much of it is in circulation. Therefore, the power to regulate the money supply is also the power to regulate its value, which is also the power to manipulate and control entire economies. It is important to clearly understand the Federal Reserve is a private corporation. It is about as federal as Federal Express. It makes its own policies and is under little regulation by the U.S. government. It is a private bank that loans all the currency at interest to the government, completely consistent with the central banking model that the country sought to escape from when it declared independence in the American Revolutionary War. Now, going back to 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was not the only bill pushed through Congress for the vested financial interests. They also pushed its partner, the federal income tax. First of all, the federal income tax is completely unconstitutional, as it is a direct, unapportioned tax, and the required number of states needed in order to ratify the amendment to allow the income tax was never legally met, and this has even been cited in modern court cases. Second, at the present day, roughly 25% of the average worker's income is taken from them via this tax. That means you work 3 months out of the year to fulfill this tax obligation. And where does that money go? According to the Grace Commission report of the 1980s, 100% of what is collected is absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt and by federal government contributions to transfer payments. In other words, all individual income tax revenues are gone before 1 nickel is spent on the services which taxpayers expect from their government. Today, the money Americans make working 3 months out of the year goes almost entirely to the interest fees charged for the debt-based fiat currency. The fact is, the federal income tax exists to feed the Federal Reserve federal government money machine, making sure the interest payments are always there. And third, even with the government claim as to the legality of the income tax, there is still evidently no statute, no law in existence that requires you to pay this tax.
You know, these days, around 62% of Americans invest in stocks, and if you look at the S&P 500, it's nearly doubled in the last 5 years. So, you would think everybody's getting rich, right? Well, you would be dead wrong, okay? Wall Street has a little nickname for most Americans. They call them capital donors, because 75% of regular people actually lose money investing in stocks, and they just end up making rich people richer. Right now, the wealthiest 10% of Americans own nearly 90% of the entire stock market. So clearly, there's a massive difference between how regular people invest and how rich people invest. So today, we're showing you how rich people really invest in stocks, from the basics to the billionaire playbook.
What if everything you thought you knew about God, about reality, is just a shadow, a reflection? Does the question, who is God, bring us closer to the truth or further away? Today's brilliant minds debate whether it is possible that the universe is a giant simulation. Does that seem illogical to you? Think about our own technology. We create almost perfect virtual realities. Couldn't infinitely more advanced beings already be doing so? But what does God have to do with all this? If God is all-powerful, could he create a rock he cannot lift? If he is omnipresent, why do we look for him outside? If he is omniscient and good, why does evil exist? These questions are not meant to find a logical answer. They are meant to force you out of the box. As in Plato's cave, if you only look at the shadows, the real truth escapes you. What if I told you that you don't need to go to God, because you are God? Not a separate God, not just another God, but the universal consciousness that gives life to everything. You are the programmer, the player, the canvas, and the brushstroke of your own existence. And I know this is not an easy concept. At first, I also had a hard time understanding it. But when I read the book, Know the Only Truth, I knew I had the ability to shape my own existence by recognizing that the answer to who is God has always been within me. If you are also looking for answers that will change your perspective, as happened to me, you can find access to this book in my profile description. Dare to read it and transform your life.
Russia just ripped the mask off. Bitcoin was always a CIA asset. The so-called freedom money was never freedom. It was a Trojan horse built on SHA-256, a hashing system designed by the NSA, seeded into Satoshi-era wallets that now look more like government vaults than rebel treasuries. On 6 September 2025, Moscow warned bluntly, America, drowning in 35 trillion debt, will repeat the same trick it pulled in the 1930s and 1970s, but now with crypto. First, pump a Bitcoin artificially with Tether's ghost dollars. Second, hook the world into this fake digital gold. Third, shift US debt into the crypto cloud Bishkek se. And finally, crash it. Devalue obligations and walk away clean while creditors from Asia to Africa burn. The signs were open mockery. Dormant Satoshi wallets stirred to life on US Independence Day, the same day Trump signed a monster debt bill, one big beautiful bill, and teased paying dues with a crypto check. Even insiders like Bo Hines quit after admitting he couldn't answer how much Bitcoin the government really holds. Behind the illusion, ordinary people pay higher prices while nations risk their reserves. All for an asset Washington secretly controls. And when the collapse comes, the rails are already prepared, state-approved ledgers. Ripple at the table with IMF and SWIFT, identity systems baked into blockchain. Strip away the noise, and the pattern is brutal but simple. Bitcoin was never the revolution, it was the bait. The reset is scripted, and America's survival plan is to bleed the world one more time through a digital empire.